If you were working here, would you know how to clean up this blood spill without risking disease to yourself? Whether you work in a warehouse, office, or a manufacturing plant, most of us have never considered that our coworkers could be a health risk in the form of blood-borne pathogens. Regardless of whether you are attending to the needs of an injured person or cleaning up a blood or body fluid spill, you must be aware that these situations pose a serious health risk. This video will provide you with the steps to take regarding how to handle these risks, so you can protect yourself from exposure to potential infection and disease. You should also consult your workplace's exposure control plan for specific information regarding the particular needs required by your employer. Exposing yourself to a blood-borne pathogen poses serious health risks, which include HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. It's important that you are aware of what blood-borne pathogens are, how they are transmitted, and how you can protect yourself from them. We've all heard of various viruses in the news such as HIV, swine flu, or hepatitis B, but do we really know what they are? These viruses and bacteria are actually microorganisms called blood-borne pathogens, which can cause diseases in humans. Blood-borne means that they can be carried in the blood or other body fluids, such as cerebrospinal fluid and amniotic fluid. Some body fluids, such as urine or vomit, are generally not considered infectious. But if any fluid contains any amount of blood, it is considered infectious. There are many types of blood-borne pathogens. However, we're going to focus on three: HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is the virus that causes AIDS and is different from most other viruses because it attacks the immune system. HIV finds and destroys a type of white blood cell that the immune system must have to fight disease. Since HIV is a fragile virus and cannot live very long outside of the body, your chances of coming into contact with this disease are slim. Hepatitis B, however, is far more prevalent. It is a liver disease caused by the hepatitis B virus. It ranges in severity from a mild illness, lasting a few weeks, to a serious long-term illness that can lead to liver disease or liver cancer. Hepatitis C is another hepatitis virus and is generally considered to be among the most serious of these viruses. Hepatitis C is an infection caused by a virus that attacks the liver and leads to inflammation, which can cause liver damage. Hepatitis C can be either acute or chronic. Acute hepatitis C virus infection is a short-term illness that occurs within the first 6 months after someone is exposed to the hepatitis C virus. For most people, acute infection leads to chronic infection. Chronic hepatitis C is a serious disease that can result in long-term health problems or even death. Staph infections like MRSA are also considered to be a blood-borne pathogen, as is herpes, meningitis, and tuberculosis, to name a few. While these all pose a health risk, HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C are much more widespread, and you are more likely to come into contact with them. Regardless of the disease, following the precautions provided in this video, along with the guidelines outlined in your company's exposure control plan, will protect you from exposure to a blood-borne pathogen. Now that we understand what a blood-borne pathogen is and its associated risks, we need to know how it is transmitted from one person to another. The biggest threat to employees comes from direct or indirect exposure. Direct exposure is where you touch the body fluid, such as the blood of an infected person. This would also include contact with lesions, open wounds, or sores on the skin. Indirect exposure occurs by touching objects such as cleaning towels or clothing that have touched the blood or another body fluid of an infected person. Whether through direct or indirect exposure, you can come into contact with a blood-borne pathogen by 3 different means. First, through your mucous membranes, which are your eyes, nose, and mouth. Second, through your skin, by way of a cut, scratch, or even dry cracked skin. And last, by a puncture wound, such as a needle or any other sharp object. Protecting yourself against a blood-borne pathogen exposure is your responsibility, and you must be prepared when you are in a situation involving blood-borne pathogens by following 3 simple guidelines: precaution, protection, and plan. You'll be prepared to clean these areas without the risk of infection. Let's start with precaution. Precaution stands for universal precautions, which means that when you are handling blood or body fluids, you consider all blood and body fluids potentially infectious for diseases, regardless of how well you know that person. Protection is the next line of defense, and it comes in the form of personal protective equipment. These can include gloves, goggles, and respirator. The most important and practical personal protection equipment is the single-use glove. Gloves should always be a part of every first aid kit. Before putting on any glove, you need to make sure the glove fits your hands. You do that by pressing your hand on the palm side of the glove. The glove should be slightly larger than your hand or about the same size. Before putting on gloves, remove rings so they won't tear the glove. If the glove does tear or becomes punctured, discard it, wash your hands, and put on new gloves. Also, keep in mind that while wearing gloves, never touch your face or any exposed skin with contaminated gloves. You should also be very careful to only touch surfaces as necessary while administering first aid. As critical as it is to first put on protective gloves, it's equally important to remove the gloves correctly in order to not contaminate yourself with the soiled gloves. Follow these 4 steps for proper glove removal. First, grasp the outside edge near the wrist. Second, peel away from the hand, turning the glove inside out. Next, hold the removed glove in the opposite gloved hand, and then slide the ungloved finger under the wrist of the remaining glove. Now dispose of the contaminated gloves in a predetermined receptacle bin. The next step in protecting yourself is PLAN, which stands for Exposure Control Plan. This is a plan specific to your workplace and outlines your company's policy concerning bloodborne pathogens and how to prevent their transmission to you and anyone else working in the area. It should address specific situations, such as how to handle uniforms exposed to blood or body fluids. It should also outline how to dispose of paper towels, gloves, and other contaminated materials, and how to file an incident report. Remember, this plan is part of your protection arsenal. Take the time to review and understand its procedures. Now, with a good grasp of precaution, protection, and plan, you are ready to attend to the situation by administering first aid or cleaning up any blood or body fluid spill. Before you start to clean, remember to put on appropriate personal protective equipment. Then use a disinfectant, such as 1 part bleach to 10 parts water, to clean all work and environmental surfaces, equipment, and anything else that has been contaminated with potentially hazardous materials. Since bleach may damage or react with some surfaces, you may want to use an EPA hard surfaces disinfectant. If there are pieces of contaminated broken glass or other sharp objects, always use tongs or a brush and dustpan to clean it up. You should also wear gloves that provide liquid protection and cut resistance. All waste, such as blood or any other potentially infectious material and contaminated items, should be placed in closable biohazard or red-colored containers. The biohazard label warns others that the waste material may be infectious. Continue to wipe down the area until clean. Once removing your gloves, you must wash your hands. It's one of the most critical factors of preventing illness. Begin by wetting your hands using hot water. Now, add soap and scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. Pay special attention to your wrists, the backs of your hands, between your fingers, and under your fingernails. Rinse under running water thoroughly. Leave the water running while you dry your hands on a paper towel. Use the paper towel as a barrier between the faucet and your clean hands when you turn off the water. If soap and water are not available, use gel hand sanitizers or alcohol-based hand wipes containing 60 to 90% ethyl alcohol or isopropanol. It's best to keep wipes or gel sanitizer in your first aid kit. When using the gel sanitizer, rub your hands until the gel is dry. You don't need to use water. The alcohol in the gel kills the germs on your hands. In the event that clothing gets contaminated, it needs to be washed thoroughly. If your employer provides uniforms, be sure to tell them it's contaminated so they can get it properly cleaned. If your street clothes become contaminated, take them off as soon as possible and put them in a bag so they don't contaminate anything else. Bring your clothes in a bag to a washing machine and wash them separately from other laundry. Wash the clothing using the hottest settings recommended on the clothing labels. And it's a good idea to wash them more than once. Use detergent and chlorine bleach if the clothing is bleachable. Depending on the value of the clothing and how it's soiled, you might want to simply discard it. If you do, make sure it's in a bag that keeps it from dripping on or touching anything else. The last step in this process is to report the incident. Be sure to check with your employer or exposure control plan on how to file the report. Being aware of the risks of bloodborne pathogens is key to protecting yourself. So remember the 3 steps. Precaution, being aware that all blood or body fluid could be infectious. Protection, always use equipment to keep you safe. And plan, review and understand your workplace's exposure control plan. Follow these simple guidelines and you will prevent a bloodborne pathogen exposure so you can continue working safely for many years.